Fake blood, Celeste clothing, an inflatable pool, cell phone evidence, someone getting kicked out of the courtroom. This is everything that happened in the morning session of day 3 of David's preliminary hearing. We are bringing back our reporter who is in the courtroom, and we're going to discuss it all right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Yeah, so as you just heard, there is a lot to get into as we talk about day 3 of this preliminary hearing for singer David. Remember, he is accused of sexually abusing, murdering, and dismembering 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez back in 2025. Her dismembered, decomposed remains reportedly found in the front trunk of a Tesla out in LA back in September of last year, a Tesla that was reportedly registered to the singer. So the question becomes for this preliminary hearing, does the prosecution have enough? Is the court going to determine that there is sufficient evidence to support these charges for this case to move forward against David? Like I said, a lot to get into. Let's jump.
Her leggings were cut into pieces. That is not sensationalism. That is a direct quote from courtroom testimony describing the condition of clothing removed from the dismembered remains of a 14-year-old girl. Now, the defense wants to talk about fake blood.
Who the prosecution decides to call to the stand.
Julia, there was something that we haven't even talked about yet. And by the way, what I'm about to get into is something that has been speculated about where the defense may go. How do you explain these unusual purchases? How do you explain the potential of what appears to be brown stains or blood in the home? What we're about to talk about happened today. You even highlighted in your notes, this is a new piece of information. This seems to be where the defense is saying there could be some sort of alternative explanation. So, Julia, what happened today? What was the defense trying to suggest?
If you've been following this case online, you've probably seen clips of David's music videos, especially the ones where he's dressed in a white t-shirt with fake bloodstains. So this came up today in court. And it was the first time I've heard it during this preliminary hearing. Apparently, one of the LAPD criminalists found jugs and jars of fake blood in David's garage. Now, they didn't get into, how much of it was there, but the defense did state that there was some merchandising activity going on in David's garage, meaning they were making music merch, and that could have been, t-shirts and sweatshirts stained with fake blood. So does that explain all the evidence that was documented and collected? No, absolutely not. But it does explain the fake blood. And how did they know it was fake? LAPD did have their forensic team go out there and test it. It came back negative. It was not taken into evidence. But I think the presence of that in David's garage does set up, a new narrative for the defense to potentially seize.
Yeah, I was always wondering, are they going to say, oh, this was for a music video, right? We've heard this all.
Imagine a single crime scene photograph. On one side, forensic analysts have pieced together fragments of blue plastic recovered during autopsy, fitting them like a jigsaw puzzle into the slashed lining of an inflatable pool. On the other side of the same garage, investigators find jugs of theatrical blood, which the defense claims were used for merchandise. The two realities sit side by side, separated by a few feet of concrete and an impossible legal chasm. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Beyond the Gavel File. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The criminalist from LAPD, Lisa Lindro, delivered testimony that operates as a physical anchor point in a sea of speculation. Under microscopic analysis, tiny blue plastic fragments embedded in the victim's remains were physically matched to 4 distinct areas of linear damage in that pool. This is not a theory. This is tool-mark evidence and trace material analysis. The prosecution spent exhaustive time establishing her methodology, her background, and the unbroken chain of custody. The pool is no longer just an object found in a search. It is, according to forensic testimony, the container where dismemberment occurred.
A very important piece of testimony regarding this blue inflatable pool and how this potential purchase by David of this pool, how it matches up to what was found with Celeste's remains. Can you talk to us about that testimony today?
This, Jesse, is visibly, to me, a non-expert, irrefutable. We heard from another criminalist from LAPD. She did the actual forensic analysis of the inflatable pool, in addition to material that was sent to her by the LA County Medical Examiner's Office that was collected during the victim's autopsy. Now, that includes, I mentioned her soiled clothing, and bits of blue plastic found during the autopsy that were essentially embedded in her remains. So this criminalist actually pieced those bits of blue plastic in with the rest of the inflatable pool that she processed and analyzed, including work that was done under a microscope. And there were exhibits shown during court today, photos of how those pieces from the autopsy fit in like a puzzle with the rest of that blue inflatable pool. So there was a bit of back and forth. The prosecutor spent quite a bit of time questioning this witness, Lisa Lahendro from LAPD, about her background, her expertise, how she did this work, and what it showed. They described the linear cuts in the pool, exactly where in the pool she noted them. There were 4 different areas of damage, what she found on the underside of the pool, and how this all fits in with the larger picture that's being painted, which is that Celeste may have been dismembered.
But here is the split screen. While that evidence was presented on the overhead monitor, the defendant sat with his arms folded. Described by the courtroom sketch artist as being on another plane,
Doesn't seem to be too stressed out. Is that what he's looking like today?
Yeah, Jesse, and I can't get past that. I mean, imagine if you or somebody you knew were in that hot seat. I mean, I think you might care a little bit more. Let me tell you, actually, what the courtroom sketch artist said. I chatted with Mona Schaefer-Edwards during the court break about an hour ago, and I said to her, you know what, Mona, you've got the most interesting perspective in this courtroom in the sense that she's sitting facing the defendant. She's in the jury box area, so she gets to see his face, his expressions, and she's been sketching this for all of us who are using her art to cover this case. So she told me, Jesse, it looks to her like David is, quote, on another plane. He seems completely disengaged. I'm reading his facial expressions kind of from off to the side. I'm watching him from an angle. He's not reacting much. You know, it's a lot the same as yesterday, where he's kind of just staring straight ahead at the witness who's testifying, and then that overhead monitor that's projecting the exhibits. But no, he's really not reacting, and that includes when we see the victim's clothing, you know, her soiled, blood-stained, insect-infested, wet clothing.
Staring blankly at images of insect-infested, blood-stained clothing, he displayed no visible reaction. The mother of the victim, seated across the room, appeared frozen. The gap between those two reactions is the entire story. Then came the counter-narrative. Under cross-examination, defense attorney Blair Burke began constructing an alternative universe using a single physical item, fake blood. LAPD forensic teams did locate jars and jugs of it in the garage. They tested it. It was not human blood. It was not taken into evidence. The defense explicitly stated that merchandising activity was happening in that space, music merch, shirts, and sweatshirts intentionally stained with fake blood. Legally, this is a rationalization of physical space. It explains why a container of red liquid might exist in proximity to a crime scene. But the prosecution's forensic testimony had already drawn a hard line. The wipes found double bagged in that same garage tested presumptively positive for the possible presence of actual blood. The criminalist noted that had the chainsaws been used for dismemberment, no amount of cleaning could eliminate forensic traces to the point of a negative presumptive test. The defense theory must now perform an impossible balancing act. Fake blood for videos and merchandise. That is their explanation. Real biological evidence ignored.
The defense, what happened there?
So we ended yesterday with cross-examination of an LAPD criminalist. She was the one who was called to process evidence found in David's garage. And that evidence included everything from trash bags to rubber floor mats to blood stains. She was the one who tested chainsaws found in David's house. This was just about a week after the car was found in the Hollywood tow yard with the victim's remains in the front trunk, of course. So they continued with that cross-examination, and there was a lot of back and forth about the chainsaws. And here's why. Defense attorney Blair Burke noted there was no positive test indicating the possibility of blood on those chainsaws, so she kept on asking this LAPD witness for the prosecution why they didn't take those chainsaws into evidence. It sounded like she wanted to make the point that touch DNA, which they didn't test for, may have indicated something else, may have painted a more comprehensive picture of what exactly happened and who may have been involved, who else may have been involved, that is. But the criminalist was very sharp, very clear with her answers. At one point yesterday, she even brought her notes back out to make sure that she gave precisely the information that was documented during this investigation. So she said there did not appear to be any kind of forensic value to those chainsaws that were found in the garage, and that's why they were not taken into evidence. So my big takeaway from
Here is where the digital evidence dismantles the ambiguity.
I'm just keeping in the back of my mind as we hear about this. But I do want to get into something that I have been waiting for, the digital evidence. So if we recall,
right,
the prosecution has claimed that David lured Celeste to his home out in L.A., right, on that April night back in 2025. And, you know, I'm wondering if we're going to hear about Uber receipts and things like that. But the cell phone tracks people. The cell phone tracks people's location. This has been critical because today we finally learned about the geolocation data of David's cell phone, right? So talk to us about that testimony from this morning.
This is fascinating, and if you're somebody who likes to nerd out on data, this is going to be the most interesting part of this testimony for you. Now, I had questions when I first read some of the charging documents about why in the world anybody would take their own car, especially a car tricked out with software like a Tesla, to do anything that might be criminal. And on top of that, not just their car, but their iPhone. So right now, right before we broke for lunch, we were hearing LAPD testimony from their expert who analyzed not only the Tesla data, but David's cell phone data. So we're actually seeing maps right now where this expert is pinpointing where the vehicle, according to data they analyzed, traveled from the Hollywood Hills west along Sunset Boulevard and then north up the coast into Santa Barbara County. He's testifying how the path of that Tesla, again according to his analysis of data, matches the path of David's iPhone. Same time, same day, same location. And he's testifying how that matches up with where Celeste's passport card was later found. Right by Lake Cachuma off of State Road 154 in Santa Barbara County. Now, this is interesting, too. This has come up before in charging documents, but he's testifying both the vehicle data and the phone data show additional trips up there. After that first road trip on
An LAP expert walked the court through geolocation data extracted from the defendant's iPhone and the Tesla registered in his name. On April 24th, the morning after the alleged murder, both the phone and the vehicle travel in perfect synchronization. They move from the Hollywood Hills, west along Sunset Boulevard, and then north up the coast into Santa Barbara County. This path leads directly to Lake Cachuma, off State Road 154, the precise location where Celeste's passport card was later recovered. This is not a single trip. Data logs reveal multiple journeys along that same route in the days following her disappearance. And then the call. Half an hour to an hour after the Tesla began its journey north, the defendant's phone places an outgoing call to Celeste's number. the defense immediately objected, insisting the record state the phone made the call, not the man. The distinction is legally precise, but the question it leaves hanging is devastating. Who was he calling, and why, if she was already gone?
It's a slam dunk or not. So that's my thought. You can jump, you tell me what you think about it if you're hearing rumors of who else may testify. But the call, I think, was interesting today too, right? This alleged call that he made to Celeste.
That was interesting, and defense attorneys actually jumped in to object during that portion of testimony. It was sustained because they wanted to make sure the court record stated that, the LAPD detective isn't testifying that David, the defendant, made a call. They wanted to make sure the court record stated his phone made that outgoing call. But that call was placed about half an hour to an hour after the Tesla got on the road heading north towards Santa Barbara County. So again, that speaks to the alleged cleanup and cover-up efforts. If he did in fact murder this girl, and if he was in fact on the way up to Lake Kachuma to dump evidence, why in the world would he?
At what point does a pattern of cleanup and cover-up become indistinguishable from a confession written in data points?
The victim was allegedly killed.
Let me ask you a big picture question as I'm hearing this testimony from today and the last few days. It seems that a lot of the focus has been so far on the alleged cleanup, the dismemberment, the cleanup, trying to get rid of the evidence of this alleged killer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I've been getting from legal analysts is, what has been the evidence that he actually murdered her? And what do I mean by that? A, the evidence that he actually killed her, that he stabbed her to death, and that he murdered her, right? Not that this was a case of manslaughter, not that this was a case of self-defense. So far in this preliminary hearing, what has stood out to you as the evidence that he murdered her?
None. There has not been any. This is circumstantial evidence. And what you pointed out the other day, Jesse, is that many of these incriminating Amazon and Home Depot purchases that were made online under a fake name for items like burn cages, fireproof mats, chainsaws, body bags, trash bags, they were not made until after April 23rd, again, the day of her alleged murder. So we haven't seen anything like home security video showing the actual killing. We have not heard from any witnesses who testified about being there and actually seeing this go down. We've heard a lot about why he may have done it, right, for financial gain. We've heard a lot about cleanup and cover-up efforts, including this road trip that is supported by data from both the car and the phone. But evidence about the murder itself and how it was carried out.
We keep returning to one phrase: her clothing was cut into pieces. Her clothing was cut into pieces.
Talking about this, the remains, as they're talking about the last clothes worn by Celeste, her family was there today, right? Her family was there today listening to all this. What was their reaction to it?
Wow, Jesse, I can't believe they're back in the courtroom today. You know, they sat through all of day one of this preliminary hearing, all of day two. They walked in a little bit later this morning. They didn't show up until about 10:30, but they did catch all of this testimony from Lisa Lehendro. They did sit in the courtroom and see these exhibits, these photos of what their daughter was wearing when her remains were found. They did see the little bits of hair and plastic that were collected during her autopsy and how those bits of plastic fit with damage from this blue inflatable pool. I didn't see any kind of visible physical reaction. You know, on day one, Mercedes, the victim's mother, she bowed her head and just started crying when we saw the photos and the contents of those cadaver bags found in the defendant's Tesla. This morning, I didn't see her react. It's like she was frozen. As we saw, it was a pair of Skechers brand socks, her daughter's underwear, her leggings that were cut into pieces, and that's because her leg.
The medical examiner's sealed report contains the precise cause of death currently gagged by an LAPD motion. but the external autopsy findings already confirm the state of the body. Leggings cut, legs severed at the kneecaps, socks, underwear, all removed and cataloged. These are not merchandising props. These are the last things a 14-year-old girl ever wore. The defense will argue reasonable doubt, pointing to the lack of a confirmed murder weapon and the absence of direct eyewitness testimony to the killing itself. They will ask if a music video aesthetic can explain away the presence of stained wipes and plastic fragments. But a puzzle piece torn from a pool liner, found embedded in human remains during autopsy, does not care about aesthetic. It is mute, physical, and irrefutable. We now face a critical question that transforms this hearing into something larger than a single case. If a defendant's own vehicle and phone map the exact route to where victim evidence is dumped, and his garage contains the container where she was dismembered, matched by microscopic plastic fragments, at what point does circumstantial evidence become a cage rather than a question? The preliminary hearing continues. The medical examiner has yet to testify. The chainsaw ordered online and delivered to that house remains missing. The full autopsy details remain under seal.
His phone made that outgoing call, but that call was placed about half an hour to an hour after the Tesla got on the road heading north towards Santa Barbara County. So again, that speaks to the alleged cleanup and cover-up efforts. If he did in fact murder this girl, and if he was in fact on the way up to Lake Kachuma to dump evidence, why in the world would he call her phone? Of course, she's not going to pick up. She's dead in his house. So again, part of the cover-up, part of the alleged cover-up, we did hear chatter about the LA County medical examiner potentially testifying today. That has not happened yet. I'm curious to see if that happens, and I'm very curious to hear from him. It's Dr. Ode Ukpo. And what's significant here is that after the autopsy was conducted last fall, LAPD actually filed a motion. They initiated this motion to place additional details from this autopsy under seal, essentially gagging the coroner, the medical examiner leading this case. He did make a statement before that about the state of decomposition and the fact that the victim must have been in that car for quite some time. Beyond that, beyond the report that was issued, we have not heard from the medical examiner yet. So a lot of questions for him. We have heard that
her clothing was cut into pieces. Go to the Los Angeles County Superior Court public docket. Search for the preliminary hearing filings in this case. Look at the exhibit list referencing the inflatable pool and trace evidence analysis. Then come back to the comments and answer this. Does the presence of fake blood in a garage explain away human remains found in the trunk of a car that your own phone drove north? Subscribe to Beyond the Gavel File, share this investigation, and turn on notifications. The autopsy report will be unsealed eventually. We will be here when it is.